Welcome to the fascinating world of Vedas, undisputedly the oldest written literary and philosophical text in the world. From the mundane to the intellectual, the Vedas are packed with incomparable insights into virtually every aspect of life. Compiled over several centuries, the Vedas leave no aspect of the human condition untouched. Above all, they give us a ringside view of the people, the society, and the culture of those times. And helping us understand the intricacies of these ancient texts is Dr. G. Ramakrishna, renowned professor of English and distinguished scholar of Sanskrit and Vedic literature.
And therefore, in the Almirah of books chronologically arranged, if there be any of human making, the first place will always belong to the Rig Veda.
Graduating from the University of Mysore, Dr. G. Ramakrishna obtained his Masters in English Literature from the University of Wales, United Kingdom. On his return to India, he joined the prestigious National College in Bangalore as Professor of English Literature. In his long and illustrious career at this venerated institution, Dr. G. Ramakrishna earned the love and respect of students not only as an excellent teacher, but also as a friend, philosopher, and guide. A prolific writer, Dr. G. Ramakrishna has authored several books on the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and other Puranic texts. A man of many parts, Dr. G. Ramakrishna is an accomplished exponent of yoga, has a keen ear for music, is an avid trekker, and an inveterate globetrotter. And so, dear viewers, here is Dr. G. Ramakrishna in his own words. In the third part of his talks on the Vedas, Dr. G. Ramakrishna elucidates on the nature of Vedic societies. Essentially tribal collectives, these societies had their own dynamics of harmony and disharmony, conflict and cooperation. But the fundamental distinguishing feature of the societies was that they were egalitarian in nature. There were no high bones and low bones. Every person was held to be equal to every other person. The manual laborer was accorded the same status and respect as the philosopher or the poet.
Now I should like to introduce another variety of life that they were conversant with, the kind of life that they were leading. There is a hymn which is usually referred to as the hymn of the Panis. Pani is a tribal group. You know, there were several tribes during the Vedic period. Social pattern of society, collectivity, and then hostility towards another collective, for example. In the interaction between tribes, there might have been harmony, but there is also disharmony. There is the wealthier tribe and the not so wealthy tribe. And what is the kind of relationship that exists among them? These are the Panis who are relatively quite rich. They possess abundant cattle and wealth of various kinds, and they have their own dwellings away from the usual dwellings of these other people. The conflict is there for the sake of wealth. So those of us who want to speak only about transcendentalism in the Veda should come down to the terrestrial world and recognize that there is a conflict in the terrestrial world among different sets of people. This is a wonderful hymn called the hymn of the Panis. It's in the 10th mandala, 1008. Look at the irony of the poem. It's a beautiful poem. Purely from the point of view of poetry, it's one of the really impressive hymns in the Rig Veda. There is Sarama. Sarama, incidentally, is the name of the dog of Indra. And Indra is the protector of the Vedic tribes. Panis are opposed to those Vedic tribes. The interests of these groups vary. Now, the Vedic tribe wants to rob the Panis of what wealth they possess. There is therefore this ongoing conflict, struggle. The wonderful irony of the poem is that Sarama, the dog of Indra, goes as an unappointed emissary to the Panis to forewarn them about the impending danger and also advising them, look here, there is a threat to your life, there is a threat to your property, you better leave the place and safeguard yourselves elsewhere. Otherwise, tomorrow, what may happen is unpredictable because there is a plan being hatched there. What is apaurushya in this? There are two tribes and they have their own inclinations and aspirations and ways of fulfilling the aspirations. And a dog which is known for its fidelity to the master has betrayed the master by going to the opposite camp to forewarn them about the impending danger. It is one of the most beautiful constructions in the Vedic text. There are one or two stanzas from that hymn which I want to refer to. This Sarama has gone there and the Panis are addressing Sarama. There is a small brook flowing. On that side the Panis, on this side Sarama is standing and telling them. And then the Panis tell Sarama, Sarama, you have come to forewarn us in the context of the cattle that we possess as our wealth. And you have come all the way from heaven because Indra is in his heaven and you have condescended to come all the way from the heaven. But tell me, Sarama, is there anyone who will forego his wealth without putting up a fight? This is what the Panis are telling Sarama. Is there anyone who is going to simply give up whatever he possesses and say, okay, please take it away? Sarama, please understand that nobody will do it. He will fight to the very end for the preservation of what he thinks is precious, what he thinks is his. Look here, if your Indra has weapons, we also have our own weapons. And we are not going to allow the weapons to remain idle. Maybe we will put them to good use and maybe we will be able to defend ourselves. Ima gavaha sarame, these cattle of ours, my dear Sarama, ya aichaha, desiring which you have come here. And that desire is of the other tribe. Paridivo antat subhage, you have come all the way from heaven, my dear. Patanti, kaste yena avasrujat ayudhvi, without fighting for the conservation of his position, who is going to give him up just like that? Uta asmakam ayudha asanti tigma, we have also got our weapons, my dear Sarama. to say that everything was milk and honey flowing and so on during the Vedic period. Such hymns which you find in abundance will give you a clear idea about the kind of conflicts which used to be there. It was a tribal formation, and each tribe has its own agony and aspiration, and then the way in which you settle scores and all that. I refer to this only to make one point, namely that the Rigvedic life had its own dimensions. The period to which this text belongs was a period in which tribal conflict was not unknown. It became manifest quite definitely, and sometimes with a lot of enmity also displayed. I refer to some of these things only to point out that the variety of contents in the Rigveda is something which is really very pleasing, very vast. Therefore, there is no need for us to impose something which is not there on the Rigveda and then say everything is transcendental. A fight for cattle is not transcendental, it is terrestrial. And it would therefore be a disservice to the Veda to study it without taking into cognizance the concrete background and the concrete facets of life of the Vedic period. This is a very important but. The Rigveda does not consider a poet to be sitting on the Himalayan heights, and the other one who cannot articulate it is a person of a lower category. If you go to a poet of today and tell him what the Rigveda tells about poets, he may not be very pleased. It will not be taken even as a left-handed compliment. The Rigveda, which has extolled the innate ability of a poet to articulate what he has experienced while others cannot, the same Rigveda has another point of view regarding the poet. This is a very crucial element in the Rigveda. There is a stanza in the Rigveda which says that the poet is like a carpenter. Carpenter is a person who works manually. He gives a shape to the log that is presented to him. He carves out of this stupid log some extremely fascinating figure. And the Rigveda says, "Hey poet, you are like a carpenter." A person who works with his intellectual caliber and a person who works only manually both of them are transforming. One of them is transforming ideas into a poem. The other one is transforming a piece of wood into a wonderful artistic work. What is it that we should understand about Vedic culture in the context of these two? The contrast between a poet and a person of the working class, let us say, a manual worker. You have some kind of a non-discrimination between manual labor and physical labor. Intellectual work being considered superior to manual work. In the course of our discussion, we shall be seeing how this is further analyzed in later Vedic literature, especially in the Upanishads. The earliest period of the Rig Veda is one in which manual labor is not looked down upon in preference to intellectual labor. That is the significance of this simile. You are like a carpenter, my dear poet. In the history of civilization, in the evolution of civilization, we see this playing a very major role practically everywhere. In fact, there is a very interesting title of a book by Benjamin Farrington, Head and Hand in Ancient Greece. Head and hand in ancient Greece. Head representing the intellectual caliber, hand representing the manual work. Now, when was the period when the two were looked upon with equal respect? And how did this attitude undergo a change gradually? Indian society is no exception to that. There was a time when intellectual and manual work used to be rated with the same amount of regard. Then there is a differentiation. And when there is a differentiation, what happens? The thought process also undergoes a change. The Rigvedic period is one in which you are speaking of the collective. It's a tribal formation. There is nothing like the high and the low within society, within the collective. But gradually, there are various historical processes which account for this change, transformation, metamorphosis in the character of society. And then there comes a period in which you say that the intellectual labor is far superior to manual labor. For example, in the Mundaka Upanishad, Vidya is differentiated as Paravidya and Aparavidya. Mundaka Upanishad comes slightly 500 years after the Rig Veda, or maybe a little more. From the collective, there is a society which has been disintegrating. It is not the tribal formation in which everyone is equal, everyone is required to work, everyone is looked upon as equal to everyone else. The greatness of the Rig Veda is because of its being the product of a collective. The collective consciousness of the tribal culture, or the moral grandeur of the collective. And this moral grandeur is not to be found elsewhere because there is differentiation and so on. When you speak of Vedic culture, you must recognize that there is a difference between the ethos of the Rig Veda and the ethos of a later period. Without recognizing, if we go on speaking endlessly, using flowery language, etc., we will not be really understanding the exact kernel of the evolution of thought in the Vedic literature. In Vedic literature, therefore, you see the representation of a changing society, a unitary society of the earlier period of the Rig Veda, and then the cracks developing there, and then there is the high and the low. Brahmanosya mukhamasit. The earliest period of the Rig Veda could not have produced that stanza because there hasn't been that kind of a differentiation yet. That is why the chronology of the Rig Veda, chronology of Vedic literature becomes important. Vedic culture is not a stagnant culture, it is always in a formative state. This is the most important element that we should recognize.